So I thought, okay, around the world, where are the main markets for pro wrestling? Right? At the time, there were two big ones, the US and Japan. So I found out that this veteran Japanese wrestler, who was about 50 years old at the time, had just opened a school in Da Nang. So I messaged him and basically went there and I trained with him for a month or so. So then that eventually led me to going to Japan, where I trained for several months. And I was training in 3 different dojos at the same time. So I was absorbing all types of backgrounds about this culture. And I realized that in Japan, it's such a big, deep set part of the culture, and it's seen as big as like sumo wrestling. And one big takeaway for me was I was involved in this show, so I was helping out with building the ring and bringing the gear back and forth. And after every show, in Singapore at the time, we would always ask each other, oh, hey, how was my match? How was my move? Did it look cool? That kind of stuff, right? Whereas in Japan, because they're all so professional, the only thing they ask is, any injuries? No? Okay, see you tomorrow. And I realized that for us to make this into a truly professional environment, it must be a job to us. So we eventually split the brands into an academy brand and a promotion brand, because it also helped the team begin to focus on how do we then design the marketing for the 2 different funnels.
Welcome back to TFC Business Show. I'm your host, Reggie, aka your Chief Financial Coconut, and we are back on set with another interesting founder stories. Okay, at first when I met this guy, I wasn't thinking of getting him on the show.
I appreciate the honesty.
Can say right. Yeah, I told you right?
I
wasn't planning on getting him because, there are many founders and not all founders have an interesting story, right? But then he sent me his deck. And then I look at the thing, I was like, oh my God, this crazy guy, right? Like the amount of work, because we've all built something, right? So the amount of work to get to a point where the People's Association gets you to organize a wrestling match at the community center must have been a crazy process, right? So that's why today we are in studio with Greg from GrappleMax. For our audience that don't know you, could you introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure. Hi, everyone. So my name is Greg. I'm the co-founder and CEO of GrappleMax. So I think in short, we are a pro wrestling events company, academy, and a community space. Yeah, so it's been 9 years of doing this. So we run monthly wrestling shows. We train people to be part of these shows. And we also we try to create social impact through the form of pro wrestling. Just to be clear about this, right? So for those who are unsure, this is the one that is a performance. It's scripted, and so I've been doing this for about 14 years actually, and along the way I've been doing this as my side hustle until 2023, alongside running a lot of seed stage startups from 2017 to 2023. And what I realized over time was that a lot of lessons which I derived from pro wrestling, I was using it in my day-to-day social life and my business life, which people couldn't believe before. Say, it's just like slamming people and just doing this like angry sounds, right? But all that requires things like public speaking, stage presence, eye contact, networking, fitness. But at the time, it was being very gate-kept. So we thought, is there a way to make wrestling something which is much more relatable to a larger audience, right? And if regular PMETs and entrepreneurs and creatives can use wrestling not to become a wrestler, but to grow their personal brand, maybe there's something there. Because we've seen that working at a small scale without even trying. But we hadn't built a company to make that happen. So that was sort of the idea behind how do we even start this company called GrappleMax.
Okay, so some of your pro wrestlers that are on your circuit managed to use it as a brand of themselves to go out there and achieve bigger professional progress.
Exactly that. So one of my favorite stories is a guy called Joseph, right? So Joseph is one of my top wrestlers. So I think he's about 40 years old, around my age too, right? And he's a A-star, previously an A-star PhD scholar. He's also writes poetry on a national level. So he's done poetry recitals at, say, poetry events. But he's also a pro wrestler in spandex. So if you see his profile pic, right? His profile pic for the poetry festival is his wrestling photo. And so it just gives you that additional spark, right? And I think that's how we began talking too, where, so very often I go to conversations and, oh, what do you do? Oh, I run an events company and I do blah, 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 pro wrestling. And then the response from me is, oh, yeah, okay, I'm just a fund manager, right? Which is fine, right? But I think it gives you that additional talking point that makes you that little bit more memorable when you go to such events. And we're seeing more and more cases of professionals who join us as a client and they use this to then boost their own equity outside.
Okay. No, I'm not doubting you. I'm just amazed that it's like a branding, function, at this point in time. But okay, I can get it lah, right? Like you're a bit more interesting than others. People are more willing to talk to you, and all that. But until the day you succeed with like 300, pro wrestlers around, right? Then that is no longer special, right?
Of course,
so there's a terminal growth rate to that.
Of course, and I think we'll deal with that when we get there.
Yeah,
but
we'll
I think
get there.
we're
We'll
so
get there.
early in the curve that I think for now we know that's the right message to put out to the market.
Okay, interesting. Okay. So tell me about, how did you come about, to build this thing, right from the start, right? Because you did say that you were kind of doing it on the side. You had like a full-time job.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
So initially I was actually in a Changi Airport group for 5 years. I was wrestling on the side. And I think I realized at a point in my career that it was very safe, right? And obviously you want your airport to be safe. So I'm very glad we're so risk averse in Changi. But I felt that I was in a position where I wanted to be allowed to fuck up, right? And sometimes fail spectacularly. But you obviously can't do that. You shouldn't do that when you're running the airport. So that was one intention. And at the same time, I told you I was really involved in the local communities at that point in time. And it was becoming very clear to me that there was a gap in terms of how do we make wrestling much more accessible. And not just in terms of people who want to try it as a wrestler, but people who want to watch it. So how do we target not just the hardcore wrestling fans, but target their friends, their family? Because that's always the hardest part. If you ask any of our fans, right, they will say, oh yeah, very hard to bring because they think it's violent or they don't understand, right? So we began thinking, can we build a company that helps to target the fans' friends and family instead? So they become the cool person to have brought people to this cool new thing, right? So we again think, how do we build a company that gives value to every single touch point? The performer, the crews, the audience as well. So that was the idea. And I knew that we couldn't stay in Singapore doing that because Singapore is so new. So I thought, okay, around the world, where are the main markets for pro wrestling, right? At the time, there were two big ones, the US and Japan, where it's been around for at easily 50, 60 years. So I knew I had to get to Japan. It was quite serendipitous. So I found out that this veteran Japanese wrestler who was about 50 years old at the time had just opened a school in Da Nang looking for people to sign up. So I messaged him and basically went there and I trained with him for a month or so. So then that eventually led me to going to Japan, where I trained for several months. So I was there full-time in Japan and I was training in 3 different dojos at the same time. So I was absorbing all types of backgrounds about this culture. And I realized that in Japan, it's such a big, deep set part of the culture. And it's seen as big as like sumo wrestling. And one big takeaway for me was I was involved in this show. So I was helping out with building the ring and bringing the gear back and forth. And after every show, in Singapore at the time, we will always ask each other, oh, hey, how was my match? How was my move? Did it look cool? That kind of stuff, right? Whereas in Japan, because they're all so professional, the only thing they ask is, any injuries? No? Okay, see you tomorrow. See you tomorrow. And then they go off. And I realized that for us to make this into a truly professional environment, it must be a job to us, right? So you can't be a regular working adult and then every day you ask your colleague, hey, how's my presentation? Good or not? Right? How's my project? Good or not? No one does that in a working environment. So why should we do that in wrestling too? So then I thought, how do I then take parts of this and bring it back to Singapore and build a similar culture over many, many, many years? So I put a team together. So I got a co-founder called Dennis. And I also convinced that Japanese sensei to become our head advisor and spokesperson. So the whole idea then was we're going to build this school with our own syllabus to make sure that safety is paramount. And we had this whole amazing business plan for 200K. And we said, okay, we're going to bring a ring. We're going to fly down my Japanese sensei full time. We're going to pay him accommodation, salary, going to pay ourselves salary. And here's the plan: convertible space, a very sexy shop house in Jalan Besar, convertible between a gym and a studio. Then we went to market. Market didn't bite. We were so gung-ho. And I'll never forget, the guy told me after this pitch, he told me, so you want my true feedback? I said, of course. You are going to take my money and you're going to lose all my money. Then I'm going to sue you for losing my money and you're going to shut your company down and your dream will die. So you want to continue? And I said, okay, but what was good about the plan? So I took it from there.
That's a great reply. That's a great reply.
Right?
Yeah,
because I mean, I think we realized that, okay, we are in a bubble. We are in this like, we're so
Like,
taken up. Let's go. And this guy went up, shut up.
enthusiasts.
It completely killed it, right? And we said, okay, well, let's not get killed by it. Let's go back and say, okay, look, seriously, if we were running a regular startup, if we were a startup coach, how would we completely tear our plan down? So we asked ourselves, do we need to fly the head coach down full time? Can we not just, teach ourselves and maybe bring him down on a guest basis? And the biggest breakthrough for us was we asked ourselves, do we need a wrestling ring? So we took away the ring. And once you take that away, it changes all your fixed costs. And what we found was then that let us set up shop in very interesting places. And more importantly, the shows we ran no longer required a big space to host like a 6x6 meter ring. So we can do mat pop-up shows. So in that 1 year of starting the company, we started shop in a circuit training gym. And it was a temporary space. So we were paying revenue share on that, which helped us very much in the first few months. And then the shows were popping up in interesting places. Like we did a show on Chinatown, People's Park Complex rooftop in the back of a bar. So we began to realize actually there's something here that's happening. So we told ourselves that I'm going to run this full time from N16 to N17, and we won't break even for sure. But if at least we have some proof of revenue that people can pay us to watch the shows, even though we have no ring, and come and train, even though we have no ring, maybe that's a start for some kind of MVP. Then, okay, I'm going to go back to working. So that was the story to that point.
Okay, great. So I I think the most interesting part of the story probably starts with like you managed to convince this Japanese sensei that chose to retire in Da Nang to come out, because there are many people that go to Da Nang and never come out. If you've been there, you see for yourself, there are tons of people from all sorts of places retiring there. I don't know what's going on there, but there's some magic. I've been there, so it's quite
a great place. I do have very fond memories of Da Nang.
Yeah, it's a great place. It's a great place. Okay. So I kind of understand the front part, right? Like it started as an interest, and then you're thinking like, oh, let's go further. Then enthusiasts are quite crazy on, right? So, you will just try, but then there was kind of like a revelation when it comes when the investor came and talked to you. So okay, I get that side of the story, right? So from then the business model sounds like a two-tier business model, or like two-way. One way is to kind of like train a bunch of people. So that is as age-old as any other school, right? There's this program, then you sell, courses, and sell training packages, and also like a martial arts school lah. Pretty much, okay? And then the other side is the events where you ticket and all that.
Yeah, tickets, merchandise.
Okay. So when you started this two-track, it was probably out of the necessity?
Yes, of course. And I think that the flywheel was that way, right? We knew that you have to run shows to attract people to come and join, right? Because in the end, for wrestlers especially, the performance is part of your training, right? Fundamentally, what wrestlers are is...
Oh, okay, I get it.
Right? So in the end, we're storytellers, right? And our job is to go up there and convince a live audience for whatever long the match is, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, that this is real. And I think more importantly is we want you, if you're watching a wrestler, to feel something. To feel something to the point where we make you want to open your mouth and shout something, right? If I'm a good guy, you cheer for me. I'm a bad guy, you boo for me. And especially in Asia where people are so shy to express themselves, how do we then get that feeling out from people? And that takes a lot of practice. So we knew that people who watch the shows may want to either join and try it themselves, or tell their friends, hey, I know this thing where maybe go and try it, bro, go and see, it could be one of the guys to do it. And then the more people you have training, the more shows you can run to then attract more people to know about this. So that was the flywheel that we initially planned. But initially being the keyword lah. So as usual, it didn't quite work out. Because the mistake we made was...
Hashtag startup life, right? Yeah.
So we were so sure that's a flywheel. It's very simple, two-prong flywheel, and we're gonna make bank, right? And then we realized that, okay, the mistake we made was people who watch wrestling shows and people who want to become wrestlers are very different, usually. Right? And we were pitching to the wrong crowd. So we began to realize that, okay, actually we were selling the wrong product. We shouldn't be selling people coming to our shows that, hey, you can also come and join us as a wrestler. We should just sell them the show in itself. The academy has an entirely separate positioning. So we eventually split the brands into an academy brand and a promotion brand, because it also helped the team begin to focus on how do we then design the marketing for the two different funnels, right? And we began to make sure that when we do talk about the training during the shows, it's not to say, hey, you could be a wrestler, but rather, do you know anyone who might be this kind of person? right? So then that became a case of, again, people want social equity, right? And you want to be the cool guy who convinced your friend to maybe unlock his potential. So we had to really refine the messaging through the shows and through the academy. And then that began to unlock a lot more traction for us in the last 3 to 4 years. But I think the real breakthrough for me really was, again, after I went back to the workforce in 2017. So I was involved in seed stage startups for 6 years. So I was involved in an app matching gig workers to gigs. I was involved in an app matching parents to educational enrichment programs. I was involved in gymnastics, and then I was involved in an ed tech company selling coding to third world countries. And then my last one was helping Ninja Van start their procurement business in Southeast Asia. So always involved in business strategy, sales, marketing, BD. And at the same time, I was running GrappleMax as a side hustle at the same time. And it came to a point where I realized that I was just completely burnt out. And I couldn't figure out why, even though it's very obvious now. But in the point of, surely you can tahan, it's just a wrestling company, right? What's the big deal? Just run your real job. And so I spoke to my circle, my parents, my loved ones, and also I had a coach at the time, a leadership startup coach. And I think at some point we all realized that I was really burning at both ends. Right, because I was helping all these entrepreneurs grow their own babies at seed stage, especially. Right, they weren't apart from Ninja Van, they weren't massive, sexy unicorns. They were all very early seed stage. So I would come home from helping these founders solve their problems and realize that mine had 25 problems to solve as well. And so that every minute I spent helping someone else solve theirs was a minute taken away from solving my own baby. And so I thought 2023, okay, we're in a position where there is some traction, but it's just dying for someone to push GrappleMax to the next level. And I recall reading somewhere that, as long as you have a fallback, a main job, then your side will never become your main job because you're not forced to survive. So I spoke to my partner, I spoke to my parents, okay, I think I've saved enough and I want to give this a shot for 2 years if everyone is supportive of the idea. And so we went for it. So I left Ninja and I went full-time into GrappleMax. So I went back full-time into GrappleMax. And that was 2023. And so right away I said, okay, now I'm full-time. I can't fuck around, right? I've got 2 years to prove that I really can do this job. So the first thing we did was, because up to this point, I forgot to mention just now, we were always sharing spaces with other gyms. So we moved from circuit training to Muay Thai to gymnastics, but always sharing spaces. And one feedback we had all the time from the members was we want our own space. We want to have placemaking and we want to make this place a place that just feels like pro wrestling. So we went searching the market, right, to find a place. We had a ring by then, to find a place that could really become that dream we had 8 years ago, which was a convertible space. And so we did. So we found a space that we could put a ring there. And we thought this place would become the home of pro wrestling in Southeast Asia. That was our tagline. And everything happens here. The shows, the workshops, the training, and even community events. So we would invite the fans down to interact with the wrestlers through things like watch parties, video game parties, just end of year dinners, and really make this whole thing a wrestling HQ effectively. And so we did. So after I went full time, I think within 6 months we moved out and began this studio, and we did our launch event party in August 2023. So then that really started the current modern phase of GrappleMax.
Fair. Okay. So tell me a little bit more about where the business is at now, right? So you guys found a home in Ubi, right? So in Ubi, that's your location. So, where are you in this stage of the business? And I think you've said some stuff around community building, and all that, right? It sounds quite early to do those things. I don't know, at least from how I look at some of the business stuff, a lot of times community building is a serious cost center. You and not say community is wrong. Thank you for tuning in. Okay, put your email address. but it's just it does take out a lot of energy, right? It does take out a lot of bandwidth, and every time every time, for me as an example, every time we want to do something for the community, right, very quickly a client project comes in, then the whole community thing just drops, and then let's just not because we hate our community, but oftentimes a founder at this stage is really just trying to keep the lights on so that we live another day to fight another day, right? So that's kind of the situation. But it sounds like you guys are doing tons of community activation. So,
Well, I think it's how you define community as well, right? And I think what you're describing here is what's your ROI on your community development initiatives, right? So I remember one of my companies in the past, we used to hire like full-time community managers. And those were obviously very hard to do at the seed stage because, like you said, community is not even there yet, and you're getting someone to come in full time to build initiatives, right? And that's a very difficult role to play at an early stage. I think one thing I didn't share earlier was our current team structure. So actually, I'm the only person who's doing this full time right now. So my entire team is on a volunteer basis, apart from myself. So what I did for the last few years was I'm very lucky where I think the team they trust me and they've seen the vision for what we're building. So everyone here has been with me for at least the last 3, if not 6, 7 years from the start. And so we eventually built the team into different structures like a real company, I guess. So we have, of course, a training team, operations team, and I assigned 2 of initially they were my members, and then they joined the team to become my community management team. So, and the idea again was they weren't just doing a job for me because these are all very young people. They're all like, late, early 20s to early 30s. So we thought, can we not give them roles where they can then put this on their CVs as well? So I probably can't pay you guys anywhere near a decent salary or even a small honorarium. But at least if you can say you are a GrappleMax community manager and you are responsible for running the non-show related events. So for example, we use the studio to run things like monthly community parties. So very small, nothing super sexy or really strategically planned. It's really just come together and we're going to put WrestleMania on TV and we're going to put our phones away and just watch together. And it sounds very silly, right? But you think about it, maybe us as kids, we're very used to sitting in front of a TV and watching something together with the family and friends. And no one is on their phone playing Uma Musume or whatever it is nowadays, right? But nowadays, it's on Netflix, it's everywhere, and people just watch it by themselves. And we thought, even small touch points like this can be very powerful, where you give young people the chance to just sit in a room and watch TV together, which is such a rarity these days. And we found that even that they found was very valuable, right? Hey, do you see that thing happen? Then they talk among themselves, and no one is on their phones. So we began realizing that there is something there we should try and build towards as well. So I think you're right to say that it's not going to be a massive revenue driver yet, but that's what generates the champions for us within the fans and within the community for the wrestlers as well.
Fair. That's pretty insightful. So it's not just about because I think a lot of founders, as you grow and you're kind of in the space, right, then you think like, oh, let's hire a community manager, right? It needs to be professionally done, this thing needs to be super organized, but I think especially like at our stage, we are kind of like past that whole like solo guy situation, like a 10-man team. Then you try to be more professional, right? Everything want to be, because we also started with a lot of volunteers, writing, doing things, organizing stuff. And then you kind of moved away from that, because I want to be professional, and not saying volunteers are not professional, but they have so many things to do. You're the first thing that they drop, right? So it is what it is. And you want to grow it, you got to be serious. But now I'm kind of back into that. Okay, we've got a new baseline. Let's play around, with some of our, creative volunteers to see whether we can test certain things, low risk. They get a platform to play around. We get to try new things, and then if it makes sense, we can always convert, right? So I think that's the thought process that I would say a lot of founders, after crossing a certain stage, will conveniently forget lah. right. Because,
I think one thing I learned very early on in the startups especially was you must be willing to fail fast lah, right? And I think that's a very common saying. But I think same thing for here, where I thought, let's not overthink the process, right? If I overthink as the main full-time guy doing this, we won't do the community till 2 years from now. Right. So and I'm so busy with running everything else in the operation. So just give it to someone who is motivated and is willing to take the ball and run. And if they fail, they fail, but it's okay because we didn't risk a lot to make this event happen. Right. No one shows up. But we've really incurred costs on the venue. So let's just maximize how do we monetize the venue as much as we can.
Okay, great. Tell me the business model now then. So is it still like school as the main business and then events as a side thing, or like what is the situation?
Yeah, so when we first started, it definitely was very much skewed towards school, right? So it's probably about 80-20.
Wow. Okay.
Over time, it normalized to about 60-40, again in favor of the school. And because what we realized with the current space we had in Ubi was that, so the plan we had initially, and again, the plan changed in the last 1 year or so, but the plan was that now we've got our own space. The hardest thing in Singapore is to find venues who want to host a wrestling show because of either space constraints or, reputational, like, wow, it's so violent and that kind of stuff, right? And so we thought we'll just use this space to run monthly events and host the shows here. And based on those projections, we will never go past 40% because your capacity capped. The most we can do there is about 80 to 90 packs. Beyond that, it's too cramped, it's too hot. Doesn't make sense. And got safety risk too. So we keep it below that. So that was the plan. Let's keep it at 60-40. What we found in the last 12 months or so is that we've begun to reach, I hope, is some level of traction and maybe nearing some tipping point here, where the more conversations we have, the more we realize that when we mention pro wrestling in events or networking or whatever it is, two things have changed from 5 years ago. Number one is they know what pro wrestling is without me having to explain. That's the first breakthrough I realized. The second breakthrough was they hear pro wrestling and they'll ask me, hey, are you guys GrappleMax? And I realized, oh, hang on, we may have top of mind here. And that made me think, okay, now this is worth having more conversations and just keep firing these conversations everywhere I go. So that began opening up venues talking to us. So then that led to us doing the show with the PA at Jurong Spring Community Club last November. And that was a huge breakthrough for us. And then going back to community, in fact, how that event happened wasn't through my efforts, but one of my very young academy students who lives in Jurong went past the CC and saw that they were hosting a Muay Thai boxing event. So he went to pitch GrappleMax. And he told me the next day, hey, they want to talk to you about doing a show here. And that's the best part, right? Because and this is what I mean by you don't know how the community will give you ROI, but this one kid gave me this opening into the PA. So then we met the PA and they were incredibly supportive, and even that surprised me. They said, yeah, no, we understand because we know that it's not violent sports. We know that you're not promoting negative values. So we'll give you guys a shot. So then within 3 months, we activated the show. And it was a event inside the MPH, and we targeted about 200 packs. But if you look at people who were just walking into the CC and watching from outside, I think we easily drew about 300 plus. And I think what they really loved most about it was you look at the people watching, and it wasn't one demographic. It was across the board. You have the kids and the families, you have the hardcore wrestling fans, but you also have like uncles, grandmas in their wheelchairs. And it's amazing. And they didn't just like, hey, what is this? Then they go off. They rocked up and they stayed for the whole 2 hours. And they asked us when we're coming back again. And so this is where I think the CC and the PA networks realized that there's something here. So to answer your question, now what we're seeing is that with more and more demand coming from venues outside, we are thinking we can probably flip it, where it becomes 40-60, where events now drive the business, because that's much more scalable, right? It's much easier to sell another 100 people than to try and squeeze another 50 wrestlers to come in.
Okay. So tell me the business model. Okay, so like the school part is quite simple, right? It's a program, they pay every month, pretty much something like that, right? Or like per lesson basis, right? So, and the margins are probably quite universal across board for most of these sort of school structure, right? You have a trainer, you give them a percentage of every student. That's kind of aga where it is, right? Is that a fair evaluation?
Much,
okay,
yeah.
So that's kind of how most education structures and schools work. Okay, I'm more interested in the event side, right? Because that is like, there are 101 permutations in running an event, let alone a sports event, let alone a wrestling sports event, right? What is the structure now? How are you guys running this? Who's footing the bill?
It depends. So we have different models going out now. So I think high level first. So the shows are very much revenues driven by ticket sales. So ticket sales
is our main revenue driver
for now.
Oh,
but we are trying to change that. So ticket sales, merchandise. Merchandise is a small amount, so I'll say primarily ticket sales to be clear. But what we are realizing more and more is that if we can put more value into the shows as footfall drivers, we are hoping that we're able to convince venues to either rev share or even foot the bill, and then they take ticket sales. So we try different models, right? So again, we're not quite sure yet. So again, we're building in public here. But we have experience all three variations of this in the last 12 months. So I think we're quite fortunate now where we're able to almost like A/B test our business models. So for example, the PA events, we are paid upfront to have a large amount of the tickets either heavily subsidized for the public or even free. So that's great for cash flow because at least your risk is all covered, but there's limited upside. So then the other way, of course, is the full risk, which is we just pay market rate for rental and we sell tickets, right? So then that's the most common approach to run a wrestling show. But then the ticket sales in Singapore, the margins are very low, honestly, right? Tickets almost never cover your margins for shows. So then that goes into, can we go out there and can we find sponsors? Can we find partners? And of course, your hybrid is, can we get maybe a subsidized rental in exchange for a rev share or something along those lines? And we're trying all three versions throughout this year to see which one is the most viable for us long term. One thing we're trying to do now to give more value to the venues is we're discovering more and more that there is demand not just for, say, a 2-hour wrestling show, but to do programming that takes up a whole day, half day, right? Because once you say, oh, you bring us in, give us your space for the day or the weekend, we're going to draw X thousand people to your space. That suddenly becomes very sexy to a mall or to a space, right? Compared to give me a space for 2 hours for a wrestling show. Okay, Lord, you sell your thing, Lord, right? But if I can draw X thousand to your crowd, it's a whole different game. So what we're trying to do now, and this is why I'm also telling the whole world about this, is we're trying to get partners to work with us on almost like a festival basis, where we can be the ones who are the main programming to draw people to a festival, but we find partners who are F&B or wrestling adjacent. That we can tell our partners moving forward that, oh, we've got 20 partners on board and we can easily fill programming for 8 hours. And this isn't just a back of a napkin idea. We're actually doing this now. So our next event, 30th August at Timber Plus.
Timber Plus, I saw.
Yeah.
I texted Danny about it.
Oh, you did? Danny is super supportive, by the way. He's
yeah.
incredibly supportive. So I'm very thankful to the Timber team as well. So they are letting us try this concept where we're calling it a Slam and Savor Timber Pro Wrestling Fiesta. And the idea here is you give us a space for 6 hours, and throughout the day, it's a day out for the whole family. So it's not just come and watch a wrestling show, but what do you do before that? Come down, right? Makan, watch demonstrations, watch our academy kids do like simple matches for you. But we've also brought in fringe programming from wrestling adjacent partners. So we're working with, for example, a company called Lux Improv, which is an improv comedy group. And we realized that actually we do improv too, because we're going up there and we're doing improvisation with live crowds. So they are doing a workshop for us to train young people to, let's say, hey, Reggie, if you were a wrestling character, what does it look like? And we're going to develop that using improv comedy techniques that they are running for us. We're working with a company called Astras, who does Indian clubs. So it's a workout which basically involves swinging these heavy clubs around. And we discovered through conversations with the founder that wrestlers in the 80s used to use these clubs as training. And it was even used in storylines. So, okay, bro, you're in. This is also wrestling adjacent. Right? So we're trying to find different things now because we've worked with different companies in wrestling. We've worked with companies who are like dance practitioners, parkour, stunts, fitness instructors. And there's so many things which can be wrestling adjacent that we can pull together. And so Timber is our first step at making this festival concept happen.
So actually, can you kind of extend that discussion a little bit, right? So ticket sales, I think is quite easy to understand, right? And how to sell tickets, I think that's also easy to understand, especially at the maybe let's just call it community level, right? Because you're not Taylor Swift lah, right? So you're competing with like SCO, SNYO, some of these like similar, orchestra, theatre, performance, that's kind of like the community level. And all of them struggle to raise their price. Yeah. All of them. Yeah. Right? So that's the situation. You will be constantly in the bracket of like, maybe 30 to 60 lah, right? Then some concession, 20 plus, aga, that's kind of like the place most people play in, right? So you will, to break out, you need to be a superstar. Right, so it's an eventuality if you can grow your stable to a next level, right? So that's kind of like the ticket sales business. Yeah. So from a sponsorship side of the business, I think you've kind of like played around with that a little bit. So can you just kind of like expound on that discussion? How has it been? You know, who have you talked to, and how did that look like?
So we are getting the first few sponsors coming in. So for example, last year, this F&B brand sponsored us for a tag team tournament. So basically every match was presented by this particular brand. And so for them, it was quite fun. Honestly, a lot of it was just...
Which brand can I say?
Kettle Gourmet.
Kettle Gourmet.
Yeah, so good friends of ours, they do packaged snacks primarily. So then they sponsored the tournament for a pretty decent sum. Honestly, it was very much a trust me bro kind of situation, like, right? It's like, because I can't guarantee you're gonna get XK back in ROI for sure, right? But I think at this point in time, it's getting a lot of people to just buy into the story and buy into the dream, and people who want to get involved at this early stage. And then, of course, we will do our best. We're very transparent. You know, you give us sponsorship, we'll give you, of course, the simple things like logo placement, MC shout out. But what we're seeing now is more demand is, can we put our products or some experiential activation at your event? Then can we then maybe collect some kind of leads from there? So then that came in from things like wellness, DCM, people who can do maybe a pop-up Cairo kind of experience. Then they can collect leads, and that's their potential ROI. Then the sales they go and handle downstream. And this is also why we're trying very hard to move into this festival concept, because then that extends your time of exposure to audience, right? If it's 2 hours, your exposure is maybe half an hour before the show, intermission, after all go home already, right? But if I said, no, now we got 6 hours, and your stall is there throughout, right? And in future, maybe 6 hours becomes 2 days, becomes a week, for all you know. That changes the conversation as well. So I think TLDR is, don't know yet, still figuring it out, but we think this is the right way to go, where we keep giving more value to the sponsors as well.
Okay, so that currently the only guy that really sponsor is that brand.
We've had a few others, but I would say smaller monetary amounts.
Okay,
so that is probably the best case study so far. It's significant to my sponsors, so let's be clear about that. But relatively smaller monetary amounts so far.
Okay, fair. So you're trying to do the festival model, and then the first one that you guys gonna try is at Timber. Right? Okay, fair. I think that it's a very clear idea. So then what would be next few things then? Okay, so like I think whether is it growing a team or whether is it like growing the thing to the next level, I think you kind of already have some idea, right? So but what are your bigger bets, other than the festival? What else are you going to do?
Well, we do definitely want to double down on the PA relationship. I think Jurong Spring is a start, and we've heard rumblings about wanting to take this to other CCs as well. I think that
Tampines welcomes you.
Sorry?
Tampines welcomes you. Our Tampines hub needs this.
If you could speak to the MP, that's a great way to get this conversation started.
Mr. Bay lah.
Yeah. So if he's watching, we're happy to have the conversation.
Hello.
We spoke to Tampines Hub before, but there were quite a few limitations which were placed on us at the working level. So we'll wait till the traction is higher, then we'll try again. So maybe now's the right time to start having that conversation. And I'll tell you that almost my entire team are all Easties. Tanah Merah boy, myself. So we're all happy to stay in the East and to can imagine taking our whole operation to Jurong Spring. My guys, what, you crazy? I'll go through.
Yeah.
But Jurong Spring has been incredibly supportive, and I think the next step is to try and see where else can we leverage this. Because it's a very safe bet for us, where we go there and we get upfront and our risk is fairly low, and it's just very meaningful because of the people we can touch through the shows that we run. So now is to find all the hidden wrestling fans in Parliament who can come and make this happen for us. I'm sure there's more than two out there. I've met two so far. I'm sure there's many more out there, especially those who are around like my niandai. I'm sure there are people out there who are like that. So that's one.
Hidden wrestling fans.
I think the other one is looking to take the brand overseas. It's another area.
Is it too early?
It might be. So probably not in terms of directly managing. But there are markets out there. So I think Southeast Asia is fun, where there actually are wrestling companies in almost every major market. So Thailand has got 3, for example. Malaysia's got 2. Philippines has got 3 or 4. And there is an existing ecosystem where we bring some of their guys down to wrestle here, guys and girls, and vice versa will go there. So for example, we have a team going up to KL for what we call a show called Causeway Jam, which is one of the proudest names we've ever come up with. So it's Singapore versus Malaysia, GrappleMax versus Malaysia Pro Wrestling Causeway Jam, which happens twice a year. So once here, once in KL. We're also working with a company in the Philippines. So we have 5 guys going up to the Philippines next month, and we're bringing them down for timber as well. So there are these connections, and we're thinking, are there ways to then leverage this to, at the very least, raise awareness overseas? What's the path to money? We're not too sure just yet, but we do think that there are markets who would benefit from the very unique way that we're bringing wrestling to market.
Okay, fair. So, but have you kind of projected a TAM? Or you kind of like talking to the inner like curious investor here?
On the previous show, someone asked me like, what's my biggest fear? My biggest fear is that I have grossly misjudged the TAM. That's my fear, right? Because our assumption here is that because honestly, right, people who want to watch good wrestling, there is a lot out there, right? Netflix just acquired WWE for 5B, right? And that is fantastic for our awareness, but it's all out there, right? So if it's just good wrestling, there are competitors out there who can provide, people who do this on a full-time basis, WWE, AEW, New Japan Pro Wrestling. So it has to be a different positioning. And we're not sure if this positioning has the TAM that we hope it has. That's the risk, of course, right? So we looked at One Championship. And how did they differentiate from UFC? So we're big fans of One. And what One did was they said, let's focus on local stories. Let's focus on Asian values. We're not Conor McGregor, right? We're all about honor. We're about Asian values. And we want to sell that. So our gamble as well here is that the type of wrestling that we're selling resonates with an audience ex-Singapore. So honestly, the TAM, I'm not sure, but we hope we got it right in terms of where we can go.
Okay, so one of your wrestlers probably like a busy working professional, and then will strip out of the suit to like show a spandex,
I mean, it has to be, right? It has to be. And we have quite a few people in higher places, people who are CEOs, C-level people, who told me they want to get involved in wrestling. So it becomes almost like a white collar wrestling type of concept, where like if you're probably a very busy man, but maybe someday Reggie gonna be a wrestler, come and train for 3 months. And then boom, suddenly TFC has a wrestling segment on the show.
Okay.
Yeah. So we think that's a viable thing.
Seeding, guys. He's seeding me.
you gotta anchor
that's how all the entrepreneurs do that, right? We're always seeding the other party. Maybe
you were just investing. So I thought no harm seeding the idea. But the point here is we have received requests from people in fairly influential places to say, hey, I want to get involved in your show somehow. Can I be part of a segment? Can I go and do a Hulk Hogan, whatever, leg drop on someone? So we know that there are quite a few avenues which we have not.
Maybe the guy just want to attack the opponent.
Could be too. And that's another product we were talking about. But yeah, I think there's a lot more we can try and do.
Okay, fair. Very interesting. No, I mean, for people that are not, in the IP, entertainment, sponsorship kind of category, they may not understand, but, just on this note, I think there's exponential growth in these kind of categories, right? So there is a long gestation period. It's rarely linear, right? And once it bumps, it flies. And it does sound like you're kind of closer to the hockey stick space. I think so. I think you just need a few good people, that knows how to play this game, and then take it from there. Great. Any last things you want to share with maybe another aspiring entrepreneur that wants to, explore this type of IP game? Okay, I would consider you an IP game.
I was going to say that is the next step as well. IP and also licensing. Again, I think it's a very emotional game. In the end, whatever has to do with IP and events, entertainment, is very emotional, right? And you can't present the product and hope people resonate. Right? You have to understand, okay, why do people come to a show to watch? Why do people go to concerts? It's not to watch the performer, is to feel something, right? And until you have unlocked that sense of emotion, right, don't think about scaling yet.
Okay, fair. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for having me. This is a lot of fun.
Yeah. If our audience would like to connect with you, where is a good place to be?
So you can follow us at GrappleMax, one word, on all social platforms. So TikTok, YouTube, Facebook, X, across the board. You can follow me as well, Greg, GREG_GP Max. On Instagram as well.
Yeah. I hope Mr. Bay will connect with you, right?
Happy for that conversation anytime.
So yeah. He's a town council guy now, right? The chairman of the town council, and I think he was from the arts and culture or one of those categories, I think he understands, right? So shout out to you, and for all of you tuning in, if you know Mr. Bae Yam King, you can tag him, okay? And then let's see where this go. Make it happen. Okay, so for all of you, thank you for tuning in today. If you have not put your email on thefinancialcoconut.com, please go over so that we can route out of the algo and reach you directly when we're doing fun and interesting things. For now, that's it today for the TFC Business Show. We see you next week. Okay, thank you. Bye-bye.